Good morning, children. Today we are going to study about pollination, the different types of pollination. Okay, so pollination, what is pollination first of all? Pollination is the transfer of the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. From the anther to the stigma. Depending on whether it is the same flower or different flower, this transfer, pollination is of two types, self-pollination and cross-pollination. This process, self-pollination, it involves the process in which the pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower borne by the same plant or another flower borne by the same plant. So, thus it takes place in bisexual flowers or between two unisexual flowers. Now, let us see then, accordingly, self-pollination is categorized into autogamy and gnetogamy. Autogamy and gnetogamy. So, what is autogamy? Autogamy, it is the pollination of the flower is done by its own pollen. Pollination is done by its own pollen. Autogamy, it is essential that both anthers and the stigma mature at the same time. So, for autogamy, the essential factor is that both anther and the stigma mature at the same time. And what is gnetogamy? Gnetogamy involves two flowers, but these belong to the same parental plant. But these two flowers belongs to the same parental plant. They require a pollinating agent. Autogamy does not require a pollinating agent. This requires a pollinating agent. So, but both of them are self-pollination because the male and the female reproductive part belong to the same parent. So, these are the two types of self-pollination. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of self-pollination? First of all, the advantages. Self-pollination is not dependent on any external factor to deliver their pollen. Hence, they have less chances of failure. So, this is one advantage. Next, since there is almost no wastage of pollen grains, it is the same flower, no wastage of pollen grain. So plants need not produce pollen in large quantity. So the pollens are not required to be produced in large quantities. Then next is, flowers need not be large, attractive and scented. Because it is the same flower, flowers need not be large, attractive or scented. Self-pollination maintains purity of the species. A very, very important point. It maintains purity of species. So these are the advantages of self-pollination. Now let us come to the disadvantages of self-pollination. Disadvantages is that due to continuous self-pollination, the vigor is lost. Progeny, that is why the progeny becomes weaker. Now, next is, useful characters are not introduced. In this, useful characters are not introduced. And third, successive generations show decreased resistance to diseases. So, this is the disadvantage. Now, next, let us come to cross-pollination. Cross-pollination, the other name for cross-pollination is xenogamy. In this, pollen grains from the anther of the flower are transferred to the stigma of flower borne on another plant. So now, the agents for cross pollination may be biotic animals, then it is zoophily, and abiotic non-living agents. So if it is biotic factors, the animals, then if it is insects are involved in this pollination, then you will call it as entomophily. Birds, ornithophily. Bats, chiropterophily. And snails, malacophily. Okay, and non-living agents, if it is wind pollinated, anemophily, and water acts as the agent, then hydrophily. Now about these adaptations of the different flowers. Okay, this you will study more in the practicals. You have it in practicals, so we will do it more in the practical. Now let us come to the entomophily, insect pollinated flower. So if it is insect pollinated flower, the flowers, they are large size, bright colors because it will attract the insects. It has got a good odor. Then nectar, it will have nectar. It will have edible sap for the insect so that it can feed. Edible pollens. Okay, so these are the essential factors if it is an insect pollinated flower. Then ornithophily is birds. Hmm? In this, the flowers, androecium and part of the gynoecium are often protruded out of the corolla tube. They are often protruded out of the corolla tube. Hmm? If it is wind pollinated, anemophily, the style and the stigma are generally branched. If it is wind pollinated, the style and the stigma are generally branched to catch the pollen grain floating in the air. Okay, and if it is hydrophily, water acts as a pollinating agent, the flowers get detached and come to float on the surface of the water. The flowers get detached and come to float on the surface of the water. So these are all about the different agents of pollination, that is cross pollination. Okay, now if we come to the advantages and the disadvantages of cross pollination. Advantages: cross pollination produces genetic recombinants. It results in the formation of individuals with new useful characteristics. Offsprings produced usually have healthier seeds and better yields. Cross pollination have been used to produce disease resistance and high yielding varieties. These plants are more have more adaptability to the environment. They are economically more important. Okay, and what are the disadvantages? It is dependent on external agents. For pollination, it is dependent on the external agents. Therefore, a chance factor is always involved. Then it is less economical as plants have to waste a lot of energy in producing large number. And since cross pollination involves recombination of genes, sometimes few undesirable characters may be introduced in otherwise useful variety. So this is about cross pollination. Now, next we come to incompatibility and outbreeding devices. Incompatibility and outbreeding devices. So this I will tell you in the next part. Okay, children? Thank you.